or using a hand sanitizer if hands are not touched or faces. For additional information, we encourage the public to visit our website, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, or contact the number 888-1LOVE. That's 888-663-5683. I would like to use the opportunity to appeal to the public to remain calm in the face of this most recent development, and to implement all the advisories related to personal hygiene, social distancing, and overall infection prevention control. I'd like to reassure the public that the government of Jamaica, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, is doing that is necessary to keep the public informed, establish the necessary infrastructure to confront this particular issue. And frankly speaking, we anticipated from some time ago that this day, there was a strong possibility that this day would come, given the pace of the spread of this virus globally and the internal spread. And as a society, we're part of the global community with relatively open borders. So we have been preparing in the event of today. We have now just triggered the next phase of the response, which, because of an imported case, would include as a priority containment of the particular case so as to prevent the community transmission, which would be another phase. But we still feel that the country needs to be informed, be alert, and to take the necessary precaution as an absolute preventative measure. The other point I'd like to say is that it is necessary to trace persons who have come in contact with this particular individual, and we have already made contact with individuals, family members. We have already established a protocol, if you will, that they be confined to a particular space, and further assessment of that situation is ongoing. And again, that is in keeping with the protocol of containment once a case would have been identified, and in this case, an imported case. So I will end here and entertain questions, but I'm going to ask the representative from the University Hospital of West Indies to take a seat. Are they here? No? Okay. All right. They're on their way because I suspect you may want to ask some questions as it relates to the institution. The Chief Medical Officer is here, and of course, the permanent secretary. So we'll entertain questions.
Just a bit of clarification. You said that medicinal supplies are available for next.
I'm saying is that based on our assessment of inventory, I've been advised that we have enough medicines for patients who have respiratory-related ailments, which is associated with this disease, and could provide those supplies up to the next 3 months. I'm also told by the NHF that additional supplies are on order, and therefore we would expect to bolster the inventory as needed during that period of time. During that period of time, yes.
Do you foresee any difficulty with getting those supplies?
I am relying on the information from the National Health Fund and the team there, and they would have done their sort of surveys with suppliers throughout the country and beyond, because they deal with overseas suppliers also. And they have said to me that they have strong relationships and are therefore confident that they'll be able to replenish supplies as needed.
What's the protocol for sporting events such as boys and girls camps going forward?
Okay, so decisions are going to have to be made in the not too distant future as it relates to these public gatherings. I know that Cabinet took a decision last evening for the Ministry of Education to advise as it relates to the pen relays, and schools by now should have been advised that the government is taking a position to not participate in the pen relays this year because that travel application could involve levels of risk that we would like to discourage. And so we are, but I'm saying it now publicly, but we were going to actually put an advisory out against that travel. As it relates to boys and girls champs, there is a meeting scheduled between the organizers, Minister of Sports and the Minister of Education and myself, and the main sponsor. I think Grace Kennedy, of course, is the main sponsor, where a decision will be taken. And that decision should be taken within 24 hours. But needless to say, the fact that we now have a case, nevertheless an imported case, it does elevates the concerns as it relates to public gatherings. And that could be applied to all major public gatherings for the time being.
Another question, why did it take 5 days for the person to be presented in the health facility? Did the circular protocol not work?
No, I mean, the country from where the person traveled, the UK, I think the person enjoys dual citizenship. They're Jamaican, but with a UK citizenship. And I don't want to go into too much details about the individual, but the person traveled. They would have been screened as all passengers would be at the airport, but they were not on the list of countries that would have been quarantined. Remember, we had some specific countries based on the internal spread. The UK, though it has the virus and it is getting worse, would not have represented one of those high risk at the time. But so the person would have been screened in the normal course of activities at the port of entry. Having arrived, one of the things that we tell persons who come in is that they must also self-assess, and they are given documentation to that effect. And I think the person did not, based on what the investigation suggests, have symptoms until later, days after arriving. And having had those symptoms, they went to see their doctor, which led to all the other things that have transpired.
Anthony, no, TVJ News, but with that being said, Minister, I'm sure there could be many more cases like this that come into the country. So how do we stop this and prevent this?
For example, the US, what measures are in place now for the US?
There are no guarantees as it relates to, or absolutes as it relates to the spread of this virus. And I think we have said that. There are no, the only absolute from preventing an imported case is to shut Jamaica off from the rest of the world. And even so, under the legal framework, you can't shut Jamaica off from Jamaicans who are all over the world and want to come back home. What you do is quarantine them. So the reality is, as the virus spreads, it increases the possibilities and the exposure, which is why we said in the early stages of public education and information that a key part of the strategy was to delay, to allow us time to plan for the eventuality or the possibility of it coming. In other words, restricting where the risk was greatest while preparing our internal infrastructure, personnel, training, sensitization, so that the more the risk increases globally, is the more likely it will. Remember now that the virus is in about 112 countries, the last 60 countries or so over the last 3 weeks. So it's really moving at a very rapid rate. We are like the fifth or sixth Caribbean island to have the virus. So we have been able to delay to a certain point. And what is very important for us in this phase is to contain, to prevent community spread. Hence the measures that are being taken. I don't know if the CMO wants to comment further on that.
Sorry, that's what I'm saying. What about the other passengers on the plane that this particular individual traveled with? What's happening with them? What is the
All right, let me ask the same one to Demo.
We would want to reiterate that our basic premise is that persons who do not have symptoms are not transmitting the virus, okay? That is what we have based our interventions on. This person became symptomatic while in the island. So at the time that the person was in the airplane, the person did not report any symptoms, okay?
With that being said, can you walk me through how the ministry plans to carry out its contact tracing and disinfecting the areas where this person would have traveled to? And plans to carry out its contact tracing and disinfecting the areas where this person would have traveled to, and so forth.
Okay, so our main interest and big focus at this point is going to be enabling resources to do the contact tracing. So we would be looking at the transportation that brought the person in, the home situation. We will be tracking where and where this person has been, what kind of events they have attended to, and that will give us an assessment of what kind of risk. Is the risk confined to one home? Is the risk confined to a community? Is it confined to several communities? And we would have to put in measures based on that. Once we have gotten the immediate contacts of those persons, we will be looking at quarantine for those persons. Depending on how many persons are in terms of our investigations, then we'll be looking to self-quarantine. Of course, at this time, we would want all our primary care facilities, public and private, to be on alert because they must get a travel history, contact history from persons that are coming in with any kind of influenza-like illness or flu-like illness, any cough, respiratory symptoms. So I think that is where our aim has to be, for everybody to be sensitized to what is happening, have a more increased level of awareness so that they can report to the public health authorities that we can do the necessary investigations and containment as necessary.
Yes.
You would say also what parish we're talking about? As in the whole?
I certainly can. Question is, should I? And one of the challenges, let me just say, I mean, nothing is a secret in Jamaica, as you know. And I prefer I say it rather than others start to speculate. But I want to say before I say the parish that we really ought to, urging the public to, as difficult as it is, to exercise some control over the propensity to seek out, to further inquire, or worse, to be overly assertive in whatever way, shape, or form around an affected individual or affected home environment. And I'm saying it for reasons that I think I need to say it. I don't want persons to be intimidated or abused in any way, shape, or form because they are unfortunate to have had the virus. However, they would have picked it up. And not to mention persons who are not affected, but who are from a similar home or family environment. And I think it's very important that I ask the public to exercise some care as it relates to this. We're all in this thing together, and no matter how much we try, we're not going to eliminate, through aggression or otherwise, the existence or the threat that is represented here with this virus. It really is through a coordinated attempt. Now, I know I'm long-winded in giving a simple response, but nevertheless, I understand the unfortunate elements of our culture, and I think it's important to say it for the record. But the person is in on the board of St. Thomas and St. Andrew.
What do you see some virus is in the human body for the coronavirus, how long it stays in?
Stays in the body?
Yes.
You mean in terms of how long the person is infectious? Okay. So that's two different things, all right? So the person is infectious as we know, and let us understand that new information is happening every day, okay? And so we get more and more information, and we will update as we get the information. But as it is now, the virus can be passed on to persons when the patient has symptoms. So once the patient stops having symptoms, then what we tend to do is we tend to do 2 repeated tests, okay, over a period of 48 to 2 to 4 days to see if there is virus still present. And based on that, then we will say that it's safe to discharge the person. However, as I said, we have information is changing, new information, and we will update as needed.
What's the condition of this? Is it mild, severe symptoms?
Right now, the patient is stable, okay, and we have mild symptoms. I would ask Dr. Bruce if he wants to expand on that.
No, the patient, as CMO said, is stable, and we will continue to observe the patient.
Okay, let's fix it up a little. Is there anybody on this side who wants to ask a question? No, all right, I'll come back to this side.
How is the hospital adapted to this development?
The ministry has been using the time since January to prepare. Our team has an operational plan, and as of yesterday, they executed that plan.
There's a fall in matrimonials for pregnant boys versus removal. Any plans, any plans in place for that? Is it still going to happen? Did they cancel?
Question, I'm responding also to the question about cases coming in from all the different countries. Because we have to recognize that Jamaica now falls into the category of one of those countries with one imported case. An imported case for every country means that they are going to isolate that case. They are going to do the necessary contact tracing, and they are going to try to contain that to a specific area and try to narrow that down daily, okay? So it does not mean that the entire country is contaminated, all right? So right now we have one imported case that has been isolated. The public health team is a strong team that is going to be out there doing the contact investigations. We have started to do that already. We have started to look at the circle of persons. We are ensuring that those persons stay under controlled situations that we can monitor effectively. Okay.
I want to raise another issue which I think is important. At some point in time, the country will have to engage in a conversation, and we will have to initiate that conversation around the dissecting the data, the numbers of persons who are affected, if eventually we have community spread. The reality is that the virus does not symbolize a death sentence for those who are so infected. That's very important. In fact, the numbers that we placed in the public domain through a public broadcast I made a few days ago indicated that the vast majority of Jamaicans who may be contaminated with the virus will recover. And it also outlines very clearly who the vulnerable groups are. Older persons with underlying conditions, compromised immune systems, and so on. So while it is our intention, and we encourage cooperation from the public in this regard, to keep the virus out of Jamaica or to contain it when it is discovered, we do not want persons to engage in panic because they interpret the virus to mean the most extreme result. Because that is certainly not the history of the virus in other countries. And we certainly know it won't be the case here. We just have to deal with it, and that's what we are doing.
Are we contemplating travel restrictions for UK and other European countries?
Well, I announced in my presentation that we are imposing on 3 additional countries. For now, those are the 3: Spain, Germany, and France.
Any advice to Jamaicans?
But the assessment is an ongoing assessment.
Any advice for Jamaicans going on cruise institutions?
Well, I will only say what I said in the statement, that we certainly discourage non-essential travel as an important part of this. So if your cruise is absolutely essential, then it wouldn't fall in that category. But if it's not, then one would have to be advised. And the same would apply for air travel also, by the way.
Minister, a patient escaped from a quarantine facility yesterday. Can you, one, explain to us what happened, and two, talk to me about whether or not there's any plans to beef up security at quarantine facilities or what?
All right, so yes, the patient did leave the facility where he was under quarantine conditions. He was subsequently retrieved and placed back in the facility. There has been a discussion with the constabulary around security arrangements at these facilities. I had a conversation with the police commissioner, and we are in dialogue around what needs to be done additionally, because we do get support to ensure that this does not happen again. The person who left the facility did so not just against the will of the healthcare professionals, but also in contravention of the law. And so proceedings will be levied against the person they'll be charged, because we have to discourage this kind of activity. Our responsibility as a government and as a ministry is to protect the well-being of the society. And if persons knowingly puts the rest of us in a compromising position, then the law has a response for that. So that will take its course. But while we're doing that, we're going to ensure that we beef up the arrangement. It's important though to add, as I believe the clinicians can come in and support, that the person was in quarantine for observation, but the person was not displaying symptoms. The quarantine facilities is as a result of the person coming from a country of interest, a Jamaican, coming from one of those 5 countries. We place them under 14-day quarantine arrangement, even though they display good health, and because that's the period of time that the virus would take to show symptoms, and then we release them. And we have done that to a number of Jamaicans, both in their home setting and at the government institutions. So the fact that the person went out doesn't necessarily symbolize a threat.
But there's a possibility.
But there's a possibility. So what we're doing now is observing, and the reality is that if the person is unfortunate to demonstrate symptoms, then we have to now engage in another phase, which is the tracing of where the person went, who they were in contact with, and then those persons will be brought into the net. So let's hope that does not occur, but nevertheless, it's an activity that we have to discourage, because it does place all of us with a greater burden and at risk.
Could the person who drove the car that took the person away, could be charged as well? Is there any possibility of that?
I have to leave that to the investigators. I can't tell you that right off, man. I don't want to. I'm a novice lawyer, so I would venture there to give you a response.
So, what's the age of the individual who has the virus?
The stated age. It's a young person.
It's a young adult. We will provide more information as time goes by, that will enable us to carry out our public health measures. Right now, it is crucial that we make the initial contacts and we try to get persons in as much as possible. So we would, as soon as we're able, we will provide additional information to the public.
Okay, process of quality. Do you plan to give them psychological support? Because you have people saying that obviously online is a lot of
Right. So we this whole period period of quarantine, persons have demonstrated several effects, not just on the persons in quarantine, but persons who are attending to them. And we have put in place measures in terms of psychological support, and we will continue to do so. And especially when situations like this happen, it just says to us that to look to see what else we can do to help to alleviate the fears and to calm the nerves and enable them to go through this period safely.
Does this virus target some particular race?
Right now, the virus is in 105 countries. I think it is clear that it does not target a particular race. However, we will continue to review the information that is being provided to us, and if we get any such information, we will update you.
The virus does not discriminate. And nor are we in terms of our strategy. Let me see, nationwide as a
is it your information that the individual in question had visited a funeral or an event after
We are presently going through the complete itinerary of that person in order to be able to do the contact tracing. As I say, it's very important for us to demonstrate whether the risk is localized or how wide it is, because that is going to determine what kind of public health measures that we are going to have to put in.
I'm saying that's not your information.
No, the person did come to Jamaica to attend a particular event. I think it's an event that you have referred to. Right, so yes, but the investigations would be of a particular approach that would determine when the person actually demonstrated symptoms. And so one of the reasons why we're cautious to sort of elaborate. We don't want people at that event to start running all over the place and sounding alarm as if they have a virus. Remember now, the virus spreads up to this point based on the clinical information we have when persons display symptoms through droplets, through coughing, sneezing, that sort of thing. So the fact that the person may have attended an event doesn't necessarily mean that those persons are exposed. It's subject to the investigation, which is why the chief medical officer is being conservative until she has further information.
Thank you. How long do we expect this investigation to go on? When will the public be informed about?
Well, you're really harsh on us. I mean, we learned about this thing 11 o'clock and we called a press conference for 12. So I think you can credit us with doing fairly well so far in terms of keeping the public informed. As soon as the information is available, we will make it available. It's very important. I mean, I take the position as the minister, and I believe the team is with me and the government, that there's no value to anyone in holding back information from the public. We reserve the right to hold back information as it relates to the confidentiality of patient information, as it is the case with any hospital arrangement. None of us wants the world to know what our medical history, our medical conditions are, okay, without our permission. That's standard protocol in clinical practice. So we may have to manage that. We reserve the right to withhold information so as not to create panic amongst persons who really ought not to feel panicked, which is why we are cautious in terms of where that person went. But everything else, to my mind, should be made public, and that's what we're trying to do. So in answer to your question, as soon as we have the information, but we're treating the matter as an absolute priority because containment requires efficiency of execution. Any other questions?
Yes, Dr. Thompson, the quarantine, the quarantine facilities, Dr. Stephen mentioned some time ago that the St. Joseph's Hospital was included for new quarantine facilities. What other options?
Again, we have the two that you know, and there are 2 or 3 others that are being worked on. Until they are officially up, we'll just work on them. Any other?
That's something of,
Yes.
the normal education for.
The same, well, I think Abka Fitzenley was a reputation for knowing the news before the news breaks. Actually mentioned what she came here for. I don't know if she came here for other things. I mean, people travel back and forth for all sorts of reasons, but there was an event that she attended, person attended. A funeral, person attended a funeral. Exactly. They attended a funeral and I don't know what else they may have come for.
I think it is important for the media to understand that in this initial phase where we need to make sure that we contact persons and we need to ensure that we get them to comply with the procedures that we would put in place, it is with regards to that we are not divulging everything at this time. So as soon as we are able to, we do have some information, but as soon as we are able to provide that to you without jeopardizing the public health investigation that is taking place, then we will do so.
I want to use the opportunity to acknowledge the head of AFM, Mr. Richard Thompson, who is sitting to my far right, your left, and also Mr. Kevin Allen, who is CEO of the University Hospital, of course, Dr. Bruce, who is the Chief Medical Officer at the University Hospital. That's the hospital where the patient is now in quarantine. I really think that the isolation. I really think that maybe the Dr. Bruce should just indicate, because what we don't want is for people to feel like they have to avoid the University Hospital. Just indicate what the isolation facilities involve and just to reassure the public that the University Hospital is continuing business as usual and providing the vital services that it is accustomed to providing. Dr. Bruce?
Thank you, Minister. So the University Hospital at Mona has three what we call negative pressure isolation facilities, which are facilities where we can house patients who, as you know, we consider who are at risk for spreading or transmitting an infection such as this. So we are currently using one of our isolation rooms, and that was that started from yesterday. But the patient is not in contact with the rest of our patient population, and the team that's managed the patient has been trained as such. So we're happy that both the situation for protection of the patient and the staff and the members of the public has been operationalized, and we're very happy at this time with those protocols.
In other words, since I'm a non-doctor, I can put it in layman's term. The University Hospital is open for business. It is fully functional and equipped to carry out its duties. And as it relates to this particular patient, they are not in contact with the rest of the population, and therefore no one should feel exposed or overly exposed from attending to services, to access services at the hospital. The facilities there I've seen, they are very good facilities. They are made for this kind of thing. Coronavirus is not the only infectious disease. There are several others that they've had to deal with that you would not have known about. It's just that this is the topical issue and we're keeping you informed. So do not, I repeat, do not feel that the University Hospital somehow needs to either be picketed or to be avoided because we have this particular case treating. Okay? Any other? We'll close off if, yes, sir.
I've been writing from both sides. The confirmation of this first important case, is the ministry looking to increase its national response allocation?
Okay, that was a good question. So yesterday, the cabinet of Jamaica, led of course by the Honorable Prime Minister, approved a submission that was carried there by myself, supported by the team on either side of me, to allocate approximately 2 billion Jamaican dollars, 1.9 something, to bolster the response of the public health system